Everybody, I'm Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News. Welcome to our second episode of the DMN War Zoom, where we talk to draft experts about the upcoming draft, which will be next Thursday. It won't be from New York. It'll be from Roger Goodell's basement in upstate New York, where he'll announce all the picks. And I'm joined this week by Ryan Wilson of CBS Sports. He does a fantastic job on the draft and other things NFL. He's been there since 2011. Hello, Ryan. You doing good?
Hey, Calvin. Thanks for having me on, man. How you doing?
No problem. Let's go to one of the legendary writers, Jarrett Bell from USA Today. He's been there for about 27 years and a few months. He's the NFL columnist, Mr. Bell from the D.C. area. What's going on? You good?
Pretty good, Calvin. How about yourself?
I'm good. All right. I want to get into a general topic about the draft because I believe outside of the first two picks, which would be Joe Burrow and Chase Young, after that, I think we really don't know what's going to happen. So I'm going to start with Ryan. What's going to happen? Will Detroit trade down? Will they draft the corner from Ohio State? What do you think after the first two picks this thing is going to go?
Well, the interesting thing about Detroit is that Matt Patricia, the coach, and Bob Quinn, the GM, they have to win now. They had 2 years of not doing a lot of winning, and I say it all the time. They were 9-7 in back-to-back years with Jim Caldwell, and they haven't even approached that. So they have to fix it quick. And you would think, ideally, they would trade down from 3 if a team wants to trade up for Tua or Justin Herbert, whoever that quarterback is, and just get as many picks as you want. There was some report earlier this week that they were not a report. They've been talking to the quarterbacks, but they're not talking to these young quarterbacks, Tua and Justin Herbert and Jordan Love, to draft them. I think they want to make it clear to other teams that, we're open for business. And if they have to stay put, I'm taking Jeff Okudah, the cornerback out of Ohio State, or maybe Derek Brown, the defensive tackle out of Auburn. They traded Darius Slay, so they got to fix that secondary. But ideally, they would move down and just get as many picks as possible because they have to fix a lot of holes, and those guys have to do it in a hurry if they want to keep their jobs.
Now, the obvious team that wants to trade up seems to be Miami. And I was listening to a conference call with Gil Brand and Mark Dominic yesterday, and they were saying Tua is more talented than Justin Herbert, but that hip problem is a major concern. And Dominic was like, yeah, I might have him for 2 or 3 years, but how do I know, Jared, that he might not need hip replacement surgery in like 10 years? Is he being overly dramatic here?
No, because you have a history there. You have an injury and you have a guy rehabbing, and obviously to some degree they have a comfort level in where he's at. Right. And again, you have to look at these things in the moment because he may be okay in April, and like Dominic suggested, down the road you have a problem. But really, when you're talking about football and the NFL and the physicality of this sport, there's injury risk all over the place.
That's what Lee Steinberg said. He said, we're not
all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's an inherent, part of the business. I think the thing with Tua is that he could be such a dynamic player if he's healthy. And, and not only the hip injury. Remember, he had, an ankle injury before that. So it's not that he hasn't had problems, but he's been able to rebound from them. So I think if you like him enough to think that he could be your guy, then you're rolling the dice, because you're rolling the dice anyway when it comes to the NFL draft. Yeah. So why not roll the dice on a guy with such a tremendous upside?
All right. Now, I'm not sure if I read this correctly, but I think our boy Ryan had Dallas taking Cesar Ruiz on a video. But the mock draft, you got him taking who I think they're going to take, Kavion Kason. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Hopefully I can pronounce it right by next Thursday. K or apostrophe L or whatever. But when we look at Dallas, which they're picking 17, some would say you need to trade down to get to center, even though the Cowboys have drafted the centers and guards and tackles in the last years to upgrade the offensive line. And I had talked to Pete Prisco, your colleague at CBS Sports, because a couple weeks ago he had them taking Steve Ruiz to Michigan center because Travis Frederick retired suddenly. So at 17, Ryan, should they take the center? Is it worth taking the center at 17? Should they move down to get the center because people like me won't criticize them as much? What should they do?
So full disclosure, Calvin, that video you saw where I was talking about Cesar Ruiz, they were asking me for a bold prediction on draft day. I like Cesar Ruiz. I don't think I would take him at 17 though. But
Right.
here's the thing, and you talked about it. They took Travis Frederick at 31, and people didn't love that move.
Right.
The next year they took Zach Martin at 14 when they thought Johnny Manziel was going to be the guy.
Thank
Both
God
those
it
things
had-
worked out. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't hate it, but they just have so many other defensive needs. I think Cesar Ruiz is going to end up going to the first round, probably towards the bottom of the first round. So that maybe indicates the Cowboys should trade down. If they stay put, Calvin Chason. There you go. Calvin.
That's my guy.
That's your guy. I love him at 17. He's a young edge rusher in terms of he hasn't been doing it a long time. He's going to get better. He's explosive, but he's not consistent, and I think that's okay. He's going to be he'll be a good player. He's obviously number 2 after Chase Young. He's not overtaking Chase Young at the edge position. Excuse me. I also love C.J. Henderson, but he ain't going to be there at 17. I don't think
He's not going to be there. No,
cornerback out of Florida, and their conversations now that some team may trade him to the top 10 to get him. He may go that early. So it just depends. And the good news for the Cowboys is you can circle back in round 2 and get a center. And Lloyd Cushenberry out of LSU, play with Joe Burrow. Round 3, there's a kid named Matt Hennessy out of Temple. So you can fill that need. And I know they have Joe Looney and Connor McGovern as well. But if you're pressing me right now and their biggest need at 17 and Henderson's gone, I'm taking Chason.
Now, the only problem I have with Chason, and Jerry, you've covered football a long time, the man weighs 260 pounds. And what the Cowboys have done in the offseason, they've gotten a little bit bigger on the defensive line. They got Dontari Poe, they got Gerald McCoy in the interior, and of course they got DeMarcus Lawrence, who's about 290. They still got Tyrone Crawford, who's about 295, 300. So I'm thinking bringing Chase on, he's like 290, he's like 260. But obviously he's going to be an outside pass rusher. But do you think that you can beef him up a little bit, get him from 260 to 280, 290?
I don't even know if you have to go that high. Remember, what is Randy Gregory? What, 265 maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think when you're talking about a speed edge rusher, which is what Chason is, sometimes you don't have to really, drill down so much on the weight. Now, I know what you're saying. I mean, it's a big man's game, no doubt about that. But I don't know if I'm worried about that as much as whether or not he's going to be there, because now you're talking about a pass rusher and you talk about premium positions in the draft, and everybody's got this guy going to Dallas. Everybody and their mama has this guy pegged to go to the Cowboys at number 17. Well, let me tell you, if he's that good, and like you said, the number 2 defensive end after Chase Young, then he's not going to last to be there at 17. It's just like when you start talking about what can happen at the top of the draft and how these moving parts will inevitably happen. All these mock drafts are going to be blown up on Wednesday night. Okay. And so Thursday night. Maybe Wednesday night too. But the point being that that there are these premium positions. People will trade up to get a quarterback. People will trade up to get a pass rusher and maybe even a cornerback. So, maybe it's the other guy that might be the guy for him, and you talk about pronouncing names, Gross Matos. Okay.
Penn State Russian.
Yeah. I mean, that might end up being your guy if you're still there at 17 and Chason's not there. Now, but I just throw caution on it to say, everything when you start talking about these boards and how they, look to shape up, it's not going to happen that way, especially if you're talking about a premier rusher. Because look who picks right in front of the Cowboys. The Atlanta Falcons. They can sure use some help on their defensive line. And you could probably go beyond that, start looking up the board, and Denver at 15, So there's a need there for a lot of people. If they don't, if he's gone and you feel like the best available safety or the best available defensive back, cornerback is there, then, maybe you take that move there. Although I think the conventional thinking is that you get that DB in the second round if you're the Cowboys. But definitely go defense for my money.
Now, their secondary's got a lot of contractual issues. A lot of their guys in the last year of their deals did resign Anthony Brown to a 3-year deal. We're talking about Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Chason is gone. McKinney, the safety out of Alabama, say he's there at 17. Ryan, what do you think about him and this draft class? Because you talked about Henderson, Okuda, who might be at the top. McKinney is an outstanding player that I think might be worth a first-round pick. I don't know if there's good value there at 17 or not.
Yeah, it's great value at 17. I love Xavier McKinney. So he plays deep safety. He plays a little closer to the line of scrimmage. He can play in the slot. He can blitz off the edge. So he's extremely versatile. And a year ago, we were talking about Deontay Thompson out of Alabama, who ended up going in the 4th round to Arizona, I think is where he went. But McKinney was the one who was flashing when you watch that secondary. He had a great season. And if you want to take it a step further, you can watch the LSU game this year or back in the fall. He outplayed Grant Delpit, who many people considered a first-round talent coming into the draft process. McKinney has passed him in my mind. He is smart. He's a hard worker. He is tough. We were talking to him at the combine, and you know, I didn't know this until we talked about it, but Nick Saban is the defensive backs coach at Alabama. That's what he does in his spare time. So he's been coached up, and he's had people hold his feet to the fire in terms of the way he's played, and it showed up on tape. He's a special teams player, so he can contribute right away. I love him at 17, and he's not getting talked about enough. And Jarrett sort of alluded to it. You know, we're talking about edge rushers in round 1 and maybe circling back for safety in round 2. But if all those edge rushers are gone and you're not interested or comfortable taking a center at 17, Xavier McKinney feels like a slam dunk to me because he does so many things well.
There's another kid that I liked. I don't know if he'll be there for Dallas, DMN Kinlaw from South Carolina. I don't know if he'll be there at 17 or if he'll go high because obviously, as we said, those interior defensive linemen the Cowboys signed in free agency, they're a little older. And as you guys know, the NFL is a young man's game. As much as I love Tom Brady, it's a young man's game. You can't play forever. So if Kinlaw's there, but I don't know if he's going to be there because he's highly regarded outside. The kid from Auburn, he's outstanding. He's going to be gone. But if Kinlaw somehow falls and you're Dallas and say you don't have a chance to get Kason and you have Kinlaw and you got McKinney, do you put a more value on the DB or the interior defensive lineman? What do you do there? What's more valuable?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, you say that there's more value in the trenches, right? But, that's a tricky thing because if McKinney is as good as we think he could be, then that's where, your apples to oranges, comparison comes in. But, yeah, you hear a lot of good things about Kenlaw, and I get where you're going with this, Calvin, because the Cowboys have beefed up the interior of the defensive line with these free agent signees, but that's just a short-term Band-Aid. A year from now, those guys could be gone, falling off the cliff, whatever. And so they definitely have to try to fortify that position moving forward. So if they don't get a chance at a guy like Kenlaw or a first-round talent at D tackle versus DN, I fully expect that they'll try to, fill that position with some prospects later in the draft, say 3rd, 4th, 5th round.
Right,
so we'll see. So it's definitely on their hit list. A lot of defense on their hit list.
Oh, no doubt. Now, last week we had talked about wide receivers, probably the deepest it's been in such a long time. And I don't know, it seems as if when people say wide receiver is deep in this draft class, and when I look at mocks, I go, well, receivers not going in the first 10 to 12. They're going to go towards, it seems at the back end of the first round. And Mark Dominic, who's been a GM, I think with Tampa, has been around a long time, had said, hey, you don't have to get a receiver in going round 2 and get your receiver. This is how deep this class is. And with Dallas, yes, they took care of Amari Cooper with that 5-year, $100 million deal. They have Michael Gallup, who's a talented, rising number 2 guy. But they lost Randall Cobb to the Texans. I think Houston overpaid for Randall Cobb. It's the only reason why he's there because Randall wanted to stay in Dallas. So if you're Dallas and you go, I need a slot guy. I need another receiver. Day 2, day 3, is there a lot of good value there to get a good receiver? I know there's a kid at Texas, Devon Durave, who ran the slot a lot at UT. He's a guy a lot of people like. But is that the smart value, the smart play. Let's get a wide receiver in day 2, possibly day 3. I don't know what you think, Ryan.
Yeah, Duvernay is a guy I like a lot too. You mentioned out of the slot, he's a track guy, and then he runs like a running back once he has the ball in his hands. He caught a lot of screens, and you know he didn't do a lot of stuff down the field in terms of pass routes, but you can learn to do that, and I feel like he'll probably go late 3rd round, early 4th. But it's funny, Calvin, you mentioned that you don't see a lot of wide receivers in the top 10. And, you know, that's going to get pushed down because the offensive tackles and the quarterbacks are going to go early there.
Right.
But the Cowboys are going to have an interesting conversation to have should someone like Henry Ruggs or Jerry Jeudy somehow find their way to 17. Because look, we're talking about defense, and they need defense. There's no question about it. But if you pass up on Jerry Jeudy and he turns out to be a monster, you know, you got to answer that question as well. Sort of the reverse conversation with Zach Martin and Johnny Football there. So I think, right, defense makes sense. But, I mean, these guys, some of these guys, Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, one of those 3 may be at 17, and then you're going to have – maybe that's an opportunity for you to trade down for more picks. But, man, Dak Prescott and Jerry Jeudy fixes a lot of problems. But if you wait till day 3, there are going to be guys there. There's Isaiah Hodgins from Oregon State. He's a big target. I did a 7-round mock draft a few weeks ago. I had him taking Gabriel Davis out of UCF, who's another big target who can make plays. You can even go in round 3 and find a guy who is going to contribute right away just because this draft class is nuts. And a name to watch out for, T. Higgins out of Clemson. Everyone knows him and how well he played. He's going to slip a little bit. He'll probably fall to the 2nd round. He may even fall to round 3. I know a lot of teams have 7 or 8 wide receivers ranked ahead of him. Any other year, he's a 1st-round pick. So if he's hanging out there in the 3rd round, he's a big target. You know, you give Dak one more big target down the field, that's going to make life easier for him, and maybe he's there for the Cowboys when they're on the clock in round 3.
Well,
yeah, and Ryan, let me just add to what you're saying, Ryan, because I think you make some good points. Yeah, if that temptation is there to take a Jerry Jeudy at 17, don't take it. Don't bite because of what you just said. I mean, you might have a T. Higgins in the 3rd round, and you really need defense. And so those premium players, you know, at the edge rusher, at the interior defensive line, even, you know, a top-notch guy in the secondary, you're not going to have that option in the 3rd round. You may have some options in the later rounds, but to have those premier talents, they're going to go fast. So I think if you're the Cowboys, remember, you've got Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. So it's not like the cupboard is bare. Obviously, last year, Randall Cobb had a remarkable season for them, fit in, and would have been great reuniting with Mike McCarthy. I mean, it just felt like that was like right there to be had. And yeah, but money talks, right, Cal?
Money talks.
Yeah.
It's crazy because at the Mike McCarthy initial press conference, Randall Cobb was there.
Right.
And so we're like, oh, Randall Cobb's coming back. And then the Cowboys had like a meet and greet with the assistant coaches. Randall Cobb was there, you know. So Stephen Jones, we want to bring Randall Cobb back. So everything was pointing to him returning, but then money talks in the National Football League.
Yeah. And so, yeah, if you're trying to fill that need for them, though, it's the slot guy, right? It's the Randall Cobb guy, and you can probably get him a little bit later. So I don't think you have to jump at 17 at one of those premier guys, even if they fall.
It was funny that you mentioned T. Higgins because he was one of the Cowboys' video call So I'm like, wow, it's been interesting. But when you do mention wide receiver, it's that age-old mantra. Do you pick the highest ranked guy on your board, or do you pick for your need? So, like, if, say, Jerry Jeudy's there and he is your highest ranked guy, there's a reason why you have your board. So do you pick him because he's your highest ranked guy, or do you say, you know what, we need to go get that defensive end from LSU? You know, so what do you do there? How do you manage that, you know, Ryan and Jarrett? How do you say, this is our highest ranked guy, and we have a need, but this guy's down here? What do you do?
Yeah, Jared made a good point. And look, if Jerry Jeudy and Javon Kinlaw are both there at 17, I would grit my teeth and take Javon Kinlaw because he's going to get after it. He's the best pass rushing interior defensive lineman in this draft class. And Derek Brown's played forever at Auburn, so we know what we have in Derek Brown. He's amazing. But Kinlaw hasn't played a lot of football. He's going to get better, and he is a huge mountain of a man. Jerry Jeudy is lights out, and maybe he becomes Odell Beckham in terms of his on-field abilities to make plays. But as Jarrett's, he's right. You got to fix this defense because unless the Cowboys are going to score 50 points a game, you got to have some plan.
Stop some people. Got to stop people.
That's right.
And you know what, Calvin? I think when you start talking about the board, and we hear it every year, and we took the best guy who was on our board. But I think there's got to be something that says, okay, this guy is and I'm just throwing out some numbers here. This guy's a 5.88 on our board, and this guy's a 5.87 on our board. Well, but we really need the position that the 5.87 guy plays. So all of a sudden, that's a virtual tie. Okay, we're talking about virtual draft, virtual tie, and it just separated by a hair. And I think the need adds points. Okay, so but you hear it all the time about this was the top guy on our board, and I don't dispute that. Obviously, they have these guys ranked and they've got it, but so often I think when you get to that decision time, you've got to factor in need. Otherwise, you're not doing yourself any good for the process because you can just let the computers make the picks. Right. Now that's the human element of the draft, right? The human element, the hunch, the common sense. Okay, it's Stephen Jones telling Jerry, "No, we are not taking Johnny Manziel." Okay, but so you've got that part of the draft that factors into all of this. Just kind of, how sharp are you on your, on your feet when it's time to make a deal or time to make a pick?
Well, this year's draft is different because they're going to be doing it the way we're doing it. Jerry's going to be in his house in Highland Park. We think Stephen Jones is going to be at his house, even though NFL teams are scared that Stephen and Jerry are going to be at separate houses. But will things go haywire here? I mean, because everyone's used to the war room, and everyone's in there. You can call in an assistant coach. You can call in a doctor to ask about a player. Now you can't do that. Now everyone's got to be on a screen, or a computer screen, a TV screen, however they're going to do it. So how different do you think this draft will be? Will the evaluations be a little different because you didn't have those pro days for a lot of kids? You didn't have those individual workouts or visits at your team facility. So how important is this draft for your scouts? Because they've seen these kids for at least 2 years, maybe even 3 years. And that, I remember Jerry likes to say that final grade at the end of the college football season is a grade that he values because that is how you play. Now, guys stock could rise because of a good combine workout or what they do at the East-West Shrine game or the Senior Bowl. But how big is this year for scouts? Because you really got to evaluate. This is why you're paying them, because you got to evaluate these talents. So, guys, what do you think about the evaluation of scouts, how important it is this year?
I think Jerry's exactly right about that end of college football season grade, how important that is. I talk to scouts that say they're sort of relieved that the 30 visits didn't happen, the in-person visits, because he says you do all that work, and then those players come in who may have, some off-field issues, and they charm the pants off the coach, off the GM, off the owner, who are like, oh, we love this kid. We know he did X, Y, and Z at school that he shouldn't have been doing, but I think he proved to us that he can do that. And the scout's like, look, man, that's a 24-hour conversation. I've seen this kid for a year, 2 years. I've talked to the cook at the cafeteria that had to deal with him, all the way down to the janitor. We know that, okay, he can play football, but he is a knucklehead. And on that level, it's good news. You're not going to overdraft somebody. But to your point, Calvin, it's bad news if you want to see Justin Herbert throw the ball in person. Actually, Oregon had their pro day. That's a bad example. But Jordan Love throw the ball in person. Yeah. See how the ball comes off his hand. You can't tell that by watching these videos that these agents are releasing where these guys are running 4.22 40s. And, good and well, you ain't running a 4.22 40. So it's a balance. It's a balancing act. I think there's some good and there's some bad that can come of it.
Yeah, and it just reminded me something you said there, Ryan, when you talk about the scouting process in general or typically, if you will, you get other people involved, talking about the coaches after their season's over. Now they get involved in the personnel side. And that's not a bad thing because you obviously want to have prospects that these guys are going to have to coach up, if you will. So it's not bad to get their input, but it can definitely, change the opinions, you would think. The one thing Bill Belichick talked about the other day on his conference call, he said that they've actually watched more film than they normally do because of the time that they're not spending entertaining people. Entertaining may be, breaking down people when they bring them in for the visits.
Right.
They've gone to, more the nuts and bolts of what scouting is and personnel evaluation is. And so, yeah, the best ones will, find an advantage, and, the other ones, who knows. But to get to your question, Calvin, your point about the logistics of this draft, it's going to be interesting. I think you still have everything in place where you can get the doctor or the position coach, and you can get them on the phone or on the video or whatever. Mm-hmm. But glitches happen, right? All of a sudden, my call dropped, right? All of a sudden, the internet just got clogged up and it started moving
Internet's
slowly.
slow. I can't get through. I can't look at this tape. Yeah.
So they have to have landlines to be able to say, hey, now what were you saying there? you dropped.
Jerry might have a landline.
Yeah. That in addition to the communication with other teams, if you're talking trades and things like that. But it's going to be interesting because a lot of times you would think that in the midst of the war room, and it does happen. I mean, you get 3-4 people huddling, and there's one guy that makes a decision or a 1-2 punch that makes the decision. So there will still be that, but it's going to be interesting to see whether all of those voices can weigh in when they really need to, when they're on the clock.
Guys, well, I appreciate your time here on this lovely Wednesday morning. And for Ron Wilson, Jarrett Bell, I really appreciate it. You guys are real busy looking at draft picks, free agency. Yesterday I had to chase Dak Prescott in the party. Hey, it is what it is. But, hey, I want to thank you guys for joining us on the DMN War Zoom. Hopefully we can do it again. But next week, we'll most of the staff writers who cover the Cowboys will do this, and we'll dig deep into another deep dive in the draft. The draft, like Ryan and Jared. But I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for the time. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care, Ryan.